What family secret was finally spilled? That my parents had to get married. They always told us they got married in 1961, but it was 1962, 3 months before my sister was born. What's amusing is that my father was an accountant who was insanely fast with math. Whenever he was asked how many years they'd been married, he'd be off by 1. My mother would correct him through clenched teeth, and then my father would nod and agree. My great-grandmother wasn't actually Mexican, but rather was adopted by a Mexican family from a Chinese family who was being kicked out of Mexico when railroad construction was over. She always had more typically Asian features, but only spoke Spanish, and it was never really questioned. 23andMe is a hell of a thing. When my paternal grandfather died, the federal government reached out to do a state funeral. He'd been career army and a colonel, so we didn't question it. Then the funeral came, and they went all out. Huge procession. People showing up who are really big names, like heads of debts, senators, retired senators, people from the CIA and state debt. It was nuts, and we were all super confused. Turns out he was a key dude in the OC during WWII, and when the OC splintered into the CIA and Secret Service, he went the Secret Service route. He wasn't on White House detail, but instead worked in a covert office that dealt with counterfeiting and currency. He went blind when I was a toddler and retired from the army. For whatever reason, he told no one about all his covert work with the OC and Secret Service, and the only person who knew, my grandmother, was sworn to secrecy and never told anyone. My father grew up thinking he was just a colonel working on base. Only after his death were we given all sorts of cool shit like publications by him, lectures given by him, and all kinds of things from various things he did and was known for. All I knew him as was a blind old man who was perpetually smoking, drinking, and being a crotchety bastard. Turns out he was a bad motherfucker and all, but none of us knew. This is kind of messed up, but my parents told me my mom had a bad back because I pushed on her spine during birth. This was what I thought all my childhood. I think I was in my teens when my older brother told me my dad pushed my mom during an argument and she fell and had to have surgery. After my mom died, I found out the real story behind my parents' marriage. She came to my father's country to visit some of her relatives, met my father, and after just 1 week she asked him to marry her so she could stay in the country. My father accepted because he had no one else, and his parents were pressing him to get married already. But the highlight of the story is that over some time, the two of them fell in love with each other. Their love only grew over the time and they were really happy together. My mother spent her last days very ill, and she would accept only my father by her bedside. He swears to this day that she was an angel sent from God to take care of him. I'm shocked that they got married just like that, out of the blue, and ended up loving each other so deeply. I can only hope to have as good and loving marriage as they had. 1 week before my younger sister's wedding, my dad decided to call myself, both my sisters, and my mother, his ex-wife, to meet at his house for something very important he needed to tell us. We all thought he had cancer or something. We were very worried. Once we were all there, he sobbingly confessed to having a 5-year-old son living in the town next to ours, which means the kid was conceived and born while my parents were still married. He claimed he didn't know for sure that the kid was his, and he had only recently gotten a DNA test. He showed us a picture of our half-brother. He looks exactly like my dad. My mother was devastated. I was 35 when my mother finally admitted to me that she'd been lying about who my birth father was. She waited until after I'd reached out to his other children and we all thought we were siblings. He later confirmed I wasn't his. She refused to tell me who my biological father really was. After I was molested by my uncle, it came out he had done this to another one of my sisters and my family covered it up, particularly my mother. Now I know why my sister didn't like how close my uncle got to me when I was younger. My maternal great-grandmother did not like Norwegians and went to her death insisting she was full-blooded Swedish. My father is half Norwegian, so he and my mom got a lot of flack from her. It was mostly in good fun, but it could get to my dad. After she passed, my grandfather, her son, revealed that she was a quarter Norwegian. So my father, the half-breed, was no more Norwegian than her own father. My grandmother had an affair with the gynecologist who delivered my dad. We found some of the letters they exchanged years after she died. The best part? His name was Drive Tactile. Thanks for watching, subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video.